All right, everyone, welcome back to another episode. So today I want to talk about the new rig. Right here we have a small boat trailer, and over here we have the boat that's actually sitting on it, a 13-foot Ginu low-sider. I'm going to be doing a lot of videos using this rig, so I kind of want to get you guys used to it, welcome, and basically just kind of touch base on how I'm going to be changing everything around, what I did spray painting wise and how I renovated it, for a cheapish price. Before I get started, also a huge shout out to Eric Zamorn for hooking it up with the rims, new hubs, huge help, really sped up this process. So thank you a lot, man, if you're watching this, and let's get into this. Here we have our new and improved hub, bearing, and actual tire and rim. So we completely redid this. I'm going to show you right now what this used to look like and how bad it really was. Here you have what I was dealing with on that other side as well. Look how loose and messed up this thing is. It's all rusted, corroded out. Once I remove this, there's going to be a lot of gunk and just basically really bad stuff for this axle. You can just hear how it's grinding on the metal. You hear that? So that's really a really bad thing. And that's the new one over there. It's a lot smoother, and it's also a lot more steady. You can't shake it at all. It's very smooth, and basically this is a healthy setup right here. So what we're going to do today is basically remove this hub, get this tire off, take all this off, and attach the new setup to this axle here, and go ahead and begin the process. And in an upcoming video, I'm going to show you guys how to rig up trailer lights, and we'll be completely done with the rig, and you guys will finally see some cool fishing videos out on the water on the Ginu over there. Can't wait for that. So before I get started, I want to talk a little bit about the spray painting rig that I did for the trailer. I went through a couple different options that I could have done, and I decided the best setup for the price would have been just doing a nice little powder coat there, spray paint coat, using black Rust-Oleum. I went ahead and used Rust-Oleum Professional High Performance Enamel. Basically, it's just a really fancy name for matte black spray paint. Although Rust-Oleum is really good on metal surfaces, that's why I went with this, spend the extra $2 a can for basically, I believe, $5 cans or $6 cans, something along those lines. And as you can see, it came out perfect. I went ahead and scratched it up, just to see how solid the paint is, and you can't even tell when you scratch it with a knife or any sort of metal tool. So definitely try the high enamel Rust-Oleum. Go for the more expensive brand because there is a difference. I tested it a couple. Just try to buy this exact one, honestly, and you'll be able to get your trailer looking brand new. As you can see, my trailer was an absolute disaster, and with a couple bucks of paint, it looks a lot better. Also protects the exterior. So it's not a huge protectant, but it does slow down the rusting process, especially if you have a non-galvanized trailer. Definitely throw some sort of coat on it, get that water to slide off a little bit easier. But we're gonna go ahead and start changing up this hub here. That way you guys know how to do something like this, just in case you're ever in a situation where you need to replace a tire or the whole entire hub. We're gonna go ahead and show you how to do it. Necessities for this is basically just get a socket set, just because you don't know how many different sockets eventually you're going to be tightening up, the sizes. So get a complete set and get a deep socket. The reason I say to get a deep socket is mostly because you can't grab onto these nuts without actually having a little bit of elbow room to get in there, and you'll see what I'm talking about in a minute. And then obviously your ratchet, you're going to need a ratchet to kind of get that leverage to get these nuts out, the bearing and all the hubs and stuff of that nature. With this one here, it was a little bit tough because I had a couple issues. A lot of times when you're removing these bearings, there might be a couple little sockets, not sockets, a couple little rings that they call them on the inner of the bearing that get stuck over time, and they kind of almost weld into the spindle. So you might need a couple things to leverage those little stuck pieces of bearing off your spindle. So if I see it again, I'll get into it. This one was actually a really big process because of that exact situation. So I didn't really feel comfortable filming it. So I'm hoping this is gonna be a little bit easier and it slides right on out so you guys can see the proper way to remove these a little bit more easily. So let's go ahead and get started, and I'll see you guys in a minute. So basically what I'm going to do is remove everything. The reason I like to remove the tires so I have more space to work. Technically you could just remove this all together. the whole tire removal thing is just a preference of mine. So if it's not really working out, don't waste your time. Just get the hub off and start working on your next item. A cool way to get the hubcap off is basically just use your flathead, pry it right in the inside of that little crack between the bearing and the actual hubcap, and just start chiseling at it. Just try to pry it in, get it in there as easily as possible. And I actually already made a little indentation here, so you kind of just want to keep chipping at it all the way through until you get some good leverage. So we just got this hub off. I want to show you guys what an unhealthy hub and bearing looks like. So I'm going to go ahead and grab the camera. You could already see, look at all the gook on the inside of this. This is what you don't want to be seeing. That is what we're dealing with here. You can see how thickly and clogged that whole entire bearing is. When you could spin it, you could hear all the grinding. It's just lost all its lubrication. This is all just gunk. It's not really serving as a lubricant whatsoever. So we're gonna go ahead and take that pin out, and then we're gonna go for this crown piece right here and work our way in. A lot of these pins are different. Some of them come out by brute force. Other pins are kind of made of a very malleable metal, and if you get your pair of pliers, you could kind of just remold the pin and make it flat, so you could just pull it right on out. Especially with these older ones, I think they're coming out with a little bit better devices now. But in my case, I'm gonna go ahead and try to flatten out this pin so I can go ahead and put in my new bearing, get this all off. So there you have it. We finally got that pin out. Like I said, I just straightened it out. You could also reuse this pin if you don't have another one and just bend it back into place, maybe clean it up, make sure it's not made out of any, or make sure it doesn't have any weak points that can break later on, and you can just go ahead and reinsert this same pin. So like I said, make sure you're holding on to all these old pieces just in case you need them again. I'm gonna go ahead and put this right there. Now that we got that pin out, we're gonna go ahead and take this crown piece right off here. Go ahead and just bring it right on out. And it is absolutely covered in gunk. Absolutely messed up in gunk. So this is usually the first piece that comes out of your bearings, and we're gonna be reusing this piece most likely. But it's actually in decent shape. It looks like it's in really bad shape, but it's just covered in gunk. So we're gonna go ahead and put this here, clean it up, and we're probably gonna be reusing that. Now that that's off, we're keeping an eye on anything we might need again. A washer right behind the crown. Now we're getting into our inner bearing set here. And we might actually be able to just remove this whole thing right now. Just like this. As you can see, a bunch of gunk just fell on me. But that's some nastiness. Look how burnt out the back of this was. Gross in there. All of that. That's not even lubricant anymore, like I said. That's just some messed up stuff. Tires are cracking. Thank God we're getting this off, putting some fresh ones on. Like I mentioned earlier, sometimes when you're working on this bearing, on these spindles, the bearings, the hubs, this whole area here, you run into issues with parts of the bearing coming off onto the actual spindle. So right here, you see this ridge? That is actually an inner lining to one of the bearings. I think they call it an inner race liner. And that's actually wedged onto this. So we're gonna have to get another tool out here, wedge that thing off. And a lot of times after I was doing research, I realized that when parts of a bearing are getting stuck to the spindles because they're corroding onto it, so that means water's getting in and it's rusting and fusing the metal together, and it's causing all these issues, and that's why it breaks later on. So make sure your bearings are watertight and there's no salt water or any fresh water at all getting in there, messing with the overall function of the hub and the bearing. So I'm going to show you really quick how to remove these pieces that get stuck to your spindle, and basically what the next steps are after that. And as you can see, this is going to need a tremendous cleaning. You don't want to add fresh grease and fresh bearings onto this crud. So I'm going to go ahead and remove all this before I start working. As you can see, what we've done is just basically remove that first layer of grease. Now I'm going to go ahead and introduce you guys to that tool that'll remove the parts of the bearing that might get stuck to your spindle. It happened on that side and now it's on this side. So I'm starting to think this is more common than the internet made it seem. So if you're running into this issue, this is exactly how you fix that. So we're gonna go ahead and use these tools to remove this little O-ring right here, and we'll get this off in a second. So we just got a lot closer there. Guys, this is exactly what I was talking about. You can get pieces of the inside of the bearing stuck on the spindle over a long period of time. The only way I know to efficiently remove one of those things is using this tool right here. Probably the best, if not the only way to remove these things. You could heat it up with a torch, get it to expand, or maybe power saw it, but the only problem is with that is you risk actually cutting into the spindle, so probably avoid that option. This is really the best way of removing a piece that gets stuck here on the spindle, but you need to get rid of that in order to put your new bearing on. It's absolutely necessary. So we're going to continue this process and we're almost done. All right guys, so here we have our brand new setup. As you can see, huge difference in just about every way. All the grease is already taken off this. It's really important to remove that grease. You don't want to be mixing your fresh grease with the old grease. But this is our brand new rig. I just want to give you a quick comparison here on what we were dealing with. This is what we removed. And as you can see, it's just been rusted all around the surface area and even on the inside. So absolutely terrible tire here. It's got the heat cracks. You know, she was ready to blow somewhere on the highway. So we're gonna go ahead and put these guys on, and I'll be with you guys in a minute. I just unboxed the new bearing. Absolutely crystal clean. This is exactly what a bearing should look like. You know, the inside grease is still very, very fresh. Of course, these are brand new. But I gotta go ahead and put this baby on. And basically, the only thing that you need to be worried about here is slipping this on like a sock. And then you're gonna go ahead and get your crown piece, and you're gonna put it right there at the top of this. Screw it through. That hole right there will be available. Slip in that key, and you're basically just about done. Coda, come here. And that's just about it. So the hardest part is 100% getting it off the actual spindle, getting it off the trailer. After that, everything seems to kind of just flow together. But this is this is by far the hardest part. Oh my God. So we're gonna go ahead and put this hubcap on, dust cap actually, onto this part here. And believe it or not, this is one of the most tedious parts of this. They sell actual pieces that help out when it comes to putting on this piece. And it's basically almost looks like a PVC pipe, and they put it on and they just basically bolt it on. But what I'm gonna be using is a rubber mallet or a piece of wood under an iron hammer, and hopefully that'll do the trick. Sorry about the dog, she's unstoppable right now. When it comes to putting the hubcap on, you never want to use an actual iron or metal hammer. A rubber mallet is usually the best option. That way you're not denting it up too much. A lot of times these little alloy pieces of metal, since they're so malleable and easy to kind of to mold, it's very smart to use something like rubber so you don't get too many dents on it. It's all right if you put a couple dents, but you basically want it to keep its function, which is to keep the dust out and keep this whole area dry and ready to go. But as you can tell, this thing is locked on here perfectly. We now officially have a new ready to go hub bearing attached. Everything is absolutely phenomenal. Last thing is putting on this tire. And after that, we should be really cooking. But this is basically it, guys. There's not a special trick. Like I said, you want to make sure that you're keeping all those old pieces, and you want to make sure that you're not doing the wrong steps. So follow the order that you guys see here, and you'll be able to get your trailer looking perfect in no time.